Fire rips through Great Falls High School, where the arson investigation stands tonight. Plus, a new facility providing a new approach to care. And later, MTN takes a trip with the Montana Highway Patrol to learn more about dangerous drivers in the summer months.
From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 10 o'clock news.
Good evening, and thanks for making MTN your choice for news. I'm Keely Van Middendorp. Tim McGonigal is on assignment. Tonight, we are learning new details about what could be one of the deadliest Marine training accidents in U.S. history. One Marine is dead and 8 service members are missing after their amphibious assault vehicle sank while on a training mission off the coast near San Diego. Here's CBS's David Martin.
The Marine Amphibious Vehicle, AAV for short, which carries Marines from ship to shore, sank about 24 hours ago. And this afternoon, Marine Commandant General David Berger related the grim facts.
We still have 7 Marines and 1 sailor who remain missing, and search and rescue efforts are ongoing to find them.
Yesterday evening off San Clemente Island, an AAV carrying 15 Marines and 1 sailor was returning to its mothership when it went dead in the water and began to sink. Inside, they would have been crammed together and probably nauseous from diesel fumes and wave action.
It's extremely claustrophobic and just unpleasant.
Former Marine Nate Ekman recalls the AAV all too well.
I remember us saying we would have rather hiked the distances we've had to than to be carried by an AAV.
A Marine officer said last night's sinking could be the worst AAV training accident ever. All AAV training has now been suspended. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
And our top story tonight at home, an investigation is underway after a fire at Great Falls High School late last night. Great Falls Fire Rescue says it appears to be suspicious. The arson task force is working with the Great Falls Public Schools District. They're looking for 2 juvenile males who were seen leaving the area shortly before the fire was reported. We spoke with Superintendent Tom Moore about the damage, and he said that he's just thankful nobody was hurt.
Not a lot of damage. As I said, I was thankful that it was fairly contained and limited. There's obviously there is some damage done to the building, to the school, and it is going to have to be repaired, and it will cost money. So this is obviously a serious problem. I'm thankful that it wasn't more serious.
And anyone with information is asked to call the fire department. In Madison County, a massive investigation is underway after a deadly plane crash near Ennis. The small Cessna aircraft went down in mountainous terrain on its way to Jackson, Wyoming from Helena. A passenger was able to call for help. A grounds crew found that plane about 4 hours later. According to the FAA, 3 people were on board when it crashed. 1 person did not survive the crash. The other 2 were seriously injured. A helicopter was used to take victims from the scene. We will continue to update you as we learn more. Turning now to our fire watch, the hot, dry weather has fire departments around the state warning people about the dangers of wildfires this weekend. High fire danger in the forest around Butte, and temperatures and high winds can easily start wildfires. People recreating this weekend are asked to be careful when starting campfires, which could quickly turn into a wildfire.
If you're going camping and recreating, is to make sure that the fires are always out, campfires. Make sure that your barbecuers and things like that, when you're cooking outside, that aren't close to any kind of combustibles or anything like that. And just a lot of common sense goes a long way.
People are asked to immediately call 911 if they see any brush fires and get to safety. Well, with more on conditions in north central Montana, here's MTN's Elizabeth Copeland.
Well, some clouds have started rolling in to parts of north central Montana tonight. That's only going to keep us warmer overnight after a very warm day out there across our Opportunity Bank ICAM in the capital city. And we see some of those clouds still rolling in there. No rain really with some of these clouds, but we did have some stronger storms earlier, mostly across the High Line, that are going to start to dissolve out tonight. But clouds stuck around the northeast corner earlier this morning, which is why it's so much cooler there than the rest of the state. And those areas that did see the rain, like Helena, we have cooler weather there as well. But overall, we're still tracking a big warming trend for the weekend. And tomorrow morning, we're going to start out at 63 degrees. So overnight, we dropped to those 60s. But if the coolest temperature is already 63, we can only warm up quite a bit from there and we're going to skyrocket once again into those 90s tomorrow afternoon. So we'll see those 90s in the forecast already by 2 p.m. grabbing the extra water bottle or two as you head out, and that warming trend is going to last for a while, but we track some cooler temperatures on their way coming up here shortly.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, many towns and areas in rural Montana remain without access to high-speed internet, but by this fall, there will be one less town in that predicament, that being Cascade, south of Great Falls. The cable TV and internet provider Spectrum announced today that it's bringing high-speed internet and related services to Cascade by November. Residents of Cascade can get cable TV from Spectrum, but come November, they'll also be able to have high-speed internet, wireless service, and telephone from the cable provider. Spectrum official Mary Orr said that the company has brought high-speed broadband service to 11,000 previously unserved homes in Montana the past 2 years. Cascade has about 800 people. U.S. Senator Steve Daines also was on hand for the groundbreaking ceremony. He said that the service will put Cascade customers on par with internet customers in bigger cities such as nearby Great Falls. He also told MTN News that while private investment is bringing high-speed internet to Cascade, it's important for Congress to keep working on funding and other steps that can help bring that service to rural communities.
It's a full court press in Washington, D.C. to make sure we've got resources to help bridge that divide and bring high-speed internet. It's important for jobs. It's important for public safety. And telemedicine now is something we're finding out is becoming a very important tool across Montana, particularly for our veterans in the VA, but for all Montanans. And we're seeing that even more so latest with the COVID pandemic.
Daines said efforts are also underway to bring high-speed internet to Chinook and Malta on the High Line. Well, in the Electric City, the new Great Falls VA clinic held its grand opening this morning with a ceremony dedicated to veterans and clinic staff. Small groups were offered tours to see the new facility, which is the first in Montana, the VA system to implement the patient-aligned care team model. The new space is all on one floor and doubles the capacity of the old one across town. With the new model, vets no longer have to move around the building to get their care. Instead, comprehensive care teams come to one room for the veteran.
This new clinic, man, it's nice. It's got all the stuff that the staff needs, got up-to-date stuff. You don't have to go to another room to find your equipment. I'm sure the staff will love it. I know us veterans will, because we don't have to go anywhere. We go to one room and we get to stay there.
In addition to packed teams, the clinic offers telehealth, laboratory, and home-based care within 100 driving minutes of Great Falls, among many other services. Well, during last weekend's educational forum regarding interactions between law enforcement and people of color, presenters held the Great Falls Police Department accountable for a lack of accessible data over policing of minorities within Great Falls. Today, GFPD responded to those claims with full transparency. They announced that they've published reports from the past 5 years to their website in an effort to improve public access to information. They also provided an explanation for figures which suggested that they discriminated against people of color, particularly the local Native American population. Police Chief David Bowen said the apparent disproportionate amount of traffic stops for Native Americans versus whites can be attributed to inaccurate population counts, not intentional acts of racial profiling. The community activist and forum organizer acknowledged GFPD's response as a positive step towards equality. And earlier this week, we hit the road with Montana Highway Patrol, taking a first-hand look at DUIs on the roadways. MTN's Phoenix O'Connor went on a ride-along with a Montana State Trooper to see first-hand drunk drivers on the road. Trooper Chris Benson says that it's his way to keep his cousin's memory alive and keeping his fellow Montanans safe.
My cousin was killed in a DUI accident back in 2014. And one of the things that troopers do is we specialize in DUI processing and going out and finding DUIs.
We also hear from a man who was pulled over for drinking and driving. He wants to encourage other Montanans not to make the same mistake. The full story on our websites. Coming up next on the 10 o'clock news, we head to the capital city to follow up on the Helena Farmers Market. That story just ahead.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 10 o'clock news.
And welcome back. Well, the Helena Farmers Market and public health leaders say that they are still in discussions about what it will take to bring the market back. Tomorrow will be the second Saturday in a row that the Helena Farmers Market won't be operating on Fuller Avenue. This week, the Farmers Market Board and Lewis and Clark Public Health signed a consent decree confirming the market wouldn't return until they came to an agreement on a plan that would meet COVID-19 requirements. Organizers say that they're negotiating with Lewis and Clark Public Health in hopes of finding a workable plan to reopen the market.
They're cooperative with understanding the importance that the market represents for the community. It's really a ray of hope for what's going on, and so both parties are passionately pursuing trying to find common ground to get this market back open.
And the biggest obstacle remains public health's order that no more than 250 people can take part in a single event. County Health Officer Drenda Neiman addressed that issue in a statement this week and says the health department is dedicated to guiding and assisting the market with forming a plan that can allow it to reopen. And here in the Electric City, the saga of the lost meter key in downtown Great Falls finally has a resolution. After the key disappeared back in March, the city removed parking meters from the downtown area. This week, the key was found in the equipment room of a parking garage. Now, even with the key returned, the future of metered parking in the city isn't clear. The Planning and Community Development Office says they spend a lot of time coming up with alternative solutions to the parking meters before finding the key. Either way, they say the revenue from the meters is an important part of the parking program's budget, and they're here to stay in some form.
All of the revenue that is generated by meters, by parking leases, by citations, every penny of it stays in the parking program. The lack of revenue from the meters is absolutely huge, roughly 60% of the program's revenue.
Raymond said he wouldn't be surprised if the city ended up replacing the meters with new ones, but the Parking Advisory Commission hasn't finished discussing their options just yet.
We track warmer weather through the weekend. Tomorrow starting out in the 70s and heading to the 90s. We track when cooler weather makes a return coming up after the break.
Storm Tracker weather starts now with Chief Meteorologist Elizabeth Copeland.
All right, we've made it to the weekend, but not before those warmer temperatures settle in across our area this afternoon. We only had a few thunderstorms out there, mostly right across the High Line, where some stronger storms actually developed closer to Chester earlier this afternoon. We still have that moisture boiling through parts of Butte, not quite making it to Helena, but we will see some light rain showers just off the distance there. But we did have some lightning strikes earlier that now have really started to dissipate. Actually, that severe thunderstorm warning warned a couple hours ago right there just across Highway 2, just west of Havre. And we had a lot more of those clouds still situated in the forecast tonight, which are actually just going to keep us warmer more than anything else. So today we are in the 90s, now dropping to the 80s. The northeast corner saw a few more clouds earlier this morning. Didn't quite jump to those 90s like the rest of us in north central Montana did. 86 in Great Falls, 89 in Helena, just slightly cooler in Butte because of that moisture that's now moving through. But the good news is you're probably feeling cooler in Helena because of those outflow winds, maybe getting a little breeze down the valley there from some of those storms pushing through. So we are going to track drier air in the forecast for our area the next few days. So if you are going camping, again, make sure you stick your hand in the campfire after it's out or you think it's out to make sure it actually is out so we can have not too many of those at least human triggered wildfires. We are still watching for those lightning strikes as well that also can trigger some wildfire concerns. So a lot going on in north central Montana with the wildfires because we have such dry air moving in. And that really goes for all of Montana this time of year, no matter what. So we are checking those blue skies across US Bank, ICAM, and Great Falls. Again, those clouds are on the horizon there. Probably saw some storms off in the distance, mostly to our north earlier this afternoon. But we were sitting steadily in the 90s earlier, and now it's dropped to about 84 degrees. Again, some of that breeze now picking up, making it feel slightly cooler out there when the breeze is going. About 20-mile-per-hour gusts here and there. A dew point at 50 degrees, so it still feels pretty humid out there this evening, even with that wind going. Now, we do have, again, that drier air moving in. All those showers across the Butte, Helena area and the High Line are going to start fizzling out right about 11 o'clock tonight. Waking up tomorrow morning to mostly clear skies across our area, besides a few clouds moving in once again to the High Line, just very limited areas of the High Line. We're going to see the blue sky, very warm temperatures tomorrow, and those temperatures are going to skyrocket right back into the 90s. We're expecting another hot day for our Saturday afternoon and mostly sunny skies, so make sure you get out there, enjoy the lake forecast. and we're going to start seeing a lot more of the moisture move back in, at least cooler weather and moisture later on next week. So for now, at least for tomorrow, make sure you get out the grill, enjoy the afternoon with the sunny skies. But if you don't like the heat, probably not a great time to do it around 4 p.m. where we're going to hit those 90s once again. But the early morning hours, we're still in the 60s around 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. We finally dropped below that 90-degree mark. So maybe a great time to get out there a little later in the evening, beat the sun and some of that heat as we stay in the 90s, not only Saturday, but Sunday as well. Hitting 92 in Great Falls on Sunday and then ringing in the new week at a 90-degree mark through the afternoon hours. And then finally, that's when the changes start to occur, is on Tuesday. We go from well above average to below average on Tuesday as we hit those low 80s. In the capital city, we're going to hold steady in the upper 80s, low 90s for the weekend and beginning of next week. Only a few isolated storms possible through the weekend before we finally cool off, feeling much cooler on Tuesday as we hit 83.
A nationwide school nurse shortage in the middle of a pandemic. What that could mean for your kids during this upcoming school year, coming up as we continue our series, Safely Back to School.
From Montana's news leader, you're watching the MTN 10 o'clock news.
And welcome back to the 10 o'clock news. Beginning in Lewis and Clark County, leaders have purchased 2 tents for individuals that test positive for COVID-19 and need an isolation shelter. Members of the Montana National Guard and Boy Scouts helped the Lewis and Clark County Disaster and Emergency Services set up tents at the fairgrounds earlier today. These tents will house those needing an isolation shelter from COVID-19. They will have dividers and amenities to make living comfortable for those who have to stay. Individuals will be supervised on a 24-hour basis by staff and paid volunteers. Those individuals will have their own unit on the fairgrounds as well. In all, the county spent $7,500 for the tents and will seek reimbursement from the CARES Act. Well, all week long, we've talked about getting kids safely back to school. For an increasing amount of families in Montana, that means choosing homeschool. The Central Montana Organization for the Advancement of Homeschooling says more and more families are interested in what they do. We sat down with 2 leaders in the homeschool community and 1 mom who's new to homeschooling to learn about how families can succeed. Here's a portion of that conversation.
I will say it's not something that I'm taking lightly, because it's not a choice that normally would fit our family's needs. And there's so much uncertainty, and the kids have grown up in an unstable situation with the military as it is. This being the homeschool option is going to give me just a little bit of control over what they're doing, how we're handling the COVID-19 situation. It's scary, but I think there's so many resources like the organization right here that are here to help us. So at least we're in a time where there's options for us.
And Amy and Koya, you can probably attest, I'm sure it's normal to feel kind of nervous and scared about starting something up that you've never done before. Is that what you're hearing from a lot of people?
Amy? Definitely. Yes, people are worried about what curriculum they're going to choose, how the social aspect with their children.
Now that it's a popular thing, a lot of military families do it. We have a Malmstrom Air Force Base homeschooling group for just those who have access to the base. We have secular groups, we have Christian groups, we have Charlotte Mason groups and runners clubs, and you have such a wide variety of people.
Flexibility is probably the biggest blessing of homeschooling, where if you have the things that you need to do, but if you get a nice day, you can go hike, you can go fish.
And staying in the classroom, enrolling your child in music lessons will not help them earn better grades in school. Researchers from Japan and England found previous studies lacked a baseline element for comparison, which made them ineffective. They say taking lessons for the sole purpose of getting better grades is just not true. The researchers found music lessons help children improve self-esteem and social skills, but not grades. The results can be found in memory and cognition. And a school nurse shortage in the middle of a pandemic. Sound like a problem? Public health officials say it is, especially as parents across the country consider how to send their kids safely back to school. Chris Conte continues our series of reports with a closer look at what might happen at your children's school if there isn't a nurse to be found.
Of all the equipment you might find inside a school nurse's office, nothing compares to the value of the school nurse themselves.
Is it safe to return to school?
Linda Mendoza oversees the National Association of School Nurses. As she thinks about empty classrooms beginning to fill back up with students, she can't help but be filled with anxiety.
We don't have a roadmap for this. And so I think when you don't have a roadmap, that makes it a little more challenging.
School nurses will be playing a critical role in the reopening of schools. They're being asked to monitor kids for COVID symptoms and, in some cases, help health departments with contact tracing if an outbreak occurs at a school. But a nationwide school nurse shortage puts a lot of that in jeopardy.
In the midst of a pandemic, there should be a school nurse in every school. And there is not.
Nationwide, 25% of schools will be starting the year without a school nurse, a statistic that is particularly troublesome to health officials in the face of this pandemic. What's driving the school nurse shortage? For starters, pay. The average school nurse makes about $46,000. There's also a simple funding problem. School nurses are often the first to get cut when districts need to eliminate positions. The need is so great that the National Association of School Nurses is advocating for 10,000 new nurses in the next federal stimulus bill.
How will we reduce transmission of illness if we don't have nurses there to assess COVID-like symptoms?
Jenny Gormley and Doreen Crow are both school nurses in Massachusetts.
And the essential role of the school nurse is so important that there needs to be a full-time nurse in school every day at all schools.
Their hope is that in the face of this pandemic, districts across the country will find ways to support nurses with both PPE and funding.
We all want students back learning face-to-face and in the buildings, but we want to do it safely.
There's a lot of unknowns in all of this, right? It changes day to day.
As parents attempt to send their kids safely back to school, school nurses will be one of the best prescriptions for success. I'm Chris Conti reporting.
And don't go away, we'll be right back.
Hi, we're tracking very warm weather in store for our weekend and beginning of next week. It's not until Tuesday. Cooler air from the west and northwest starts to finally flow in. We go from the low 90s through the weekend and Monday, finally to the low 80s on Tuesday, which is below average for this time of year. And then we jump back up to the upper 80s by Thursday.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Well, a young lady in Pennsylvania who's never won a golf championship and has never got a hole-in-one could be the most famous golfer in the country right about now. And this is Kendall Kem, who you see here swinging a club for the first time in 6 years. The 16-year-old lost use of her left hand after she had a stroke back in 2014. This past weekend, she went to a driving range to whack some balls around for the first time since then. This video, taken by her mom, quickly went viral. All the attention has piqued her daughter's interest in learning more about the game. Nice positive video to end our night, especially during these trying times. That's all the time we have tonight at 10. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your weekend or your Friday night, and have a great weekend.